In 2013, Fantasy Flight released Edge of the Empire, which is a new Star Wars RPG, and since then they have released several other books, which fill out the canonical Star Wars universe. Starting out with Edge of the Empire, which introduces the world before, or the setting before Star Wars: A New Hope. It has 8 core races in it from the galaxy that are relatively familiar. Some of them are outside of the normal canon but are accepted. Um, it also has 6 base classes that can be played, and then inside each one of those 6 classes are 3 specialization trees that can flesh out your character even more. Um, the game itself runs on a set of its own dice, which is both good and bad because if you're starting out new, then you're learning a whole new set of dice, and everyone's on the same page. But if you're coming to it from other games, it's going to be a bit more confusing. The dice are a little harder to read, but they do make sense, so that's always good. Once you get the hang of it, you'll be good, but it'll just take a while for you to be able to roll the dice and look at it and go, okay, this is what I rolled. Um, the dice have success markers on them, there are positive and negative dice. The positive die have success markers on them. They have positive shifts, and they have triumph symbols. And there are 3 types of die. There are 6-sided die that are you get for having benefits to a roll, like if you have the right tools for a roll or the right conditions for an action, you can get some of the 6-sided die. There are 8-sided die that represent your core attribute, and then there are 12-sided die which represent your skill. On the opposite side, there are black d6 that represent negative conditions. It's dark, you don't have the right set of tools, you're being shot at. There are purple d8s, which denote the general difficulty of a roll. And there are purple d12s, which denote a contested roll, and that is your opponent's skill in terms of like attack versus dodge, that sort of thing. The negative die have negative results, negative shifts, and despair markers on them. The way that they balance, they each cancel each other out. So if you roll and you have like one positive result at the end of it with a positive shift, that means you've done really well. But if you have a positive result at the end where you succeed but you have several negative shifts, you may succeed at what you're trying to do, but bad things will happen because of that. Like if you're trying to hack a door and get it to unlock, and you succeed but you roll negative shifts, then what happens is the door opens but you might accidentally trip an alarm. So you've succeeded at what you wanted to do, but things didn't necessarily go well. In terms of the set of books that are coming out, Edge of the Empire is the first book, and as I mentioned, it comes out before Star Wars: A New Hope. The next major book is Age of Rebellion, and it takes place after New Hope and goes through Return of the Jedi. And then coming out soon is Force and Destiny, which takes place after Return of the Jedi. So all of those things are either out or on their way out, and in between them there are several other books. Each new book gives at least 3 to 4 more races and some new character specialization trees for the current classes. All in all, it's a pretty well put together game, and I really enjoyed playing it. Once you get the hang of it, it's easy, and you kind of learn how your die are going to roll. One of my The only major criticism I have is that it's really hard to advance your character, but I think that's generally how it's supposed to be. It's got a really good mechanic in at least Edge of the Empire where you're playing characters that are pretty much on the dregs of society. So you start out with obligations, which are like people you owe money to, or people you owe favors to, or like you're trying to protect your family, that sort of thing. And those things can be taxed in each session of gameplay. There is a roll at the beginning of game, and if your roll comes up, then something happens to your obligation. So if your obligation is that you owe like someone a mass amount of money, then if your obligation comes up that game, they're going to try and cash in on the money that you owe them, and you may have to either find some way to pay them, or you'll have to like do work for them to cut off some of your debt or something like that. And building that into your character gives your character a reason to exist. And that makes it particularly easy if you're, not quite sure where your character stands in the world. It gives you a good idea and allows you to build from there. In Age of Rebellion, your character has sort of a instead of obligation, it's sort of a ranking system, and it grows as you fight through the rebellion. And when you top off, you sort of get a promotion and you move on. Sometimes you get like a nifty new item or something from the Republic or from the Resistance, and that allows you to move forward and do better jobs and things like that. I, as I said before, I really enjoy this system. It works out really well if you have the right party. It does require that you find people that are interested in Star Wars, which isn't necessarily hard, but some people do have a bit of difficulty grasping the concepts and feeling invested in the world, but that's just how things go. Other than that, I recommend it. It's good. And if you're interested in Star Wars, you should play it.